What is up, everybody? Today's video is going to be a little bit of a two-in-one experience. You see, I have the world's ultimate first world problem that I would like to solve, and then I also have a burning question that I would like to answer. Every week, I sit right here at my desk and I record the Off the Cut podcast live stream. And I like to use my phone as a way to monitor the chat here on YouTube. But it's kind of hard to read the screen at that angle, and also it just drains the battery really quickly. So what I'd like to do is create a wireless vertical charging stand for it so that I can see it easier, and it charges the phone at the same time. So that's the problem, and now let's talk about the science experiment. I have been obsessed with the concept of see-through electronics ever since I got my hands on the first Game Boy Color. And it got me thinking, could I encase small, low-wattage electronics in clear epoxy? I mean, think about it. If you could create an almost crystal clear case for whatever electronic gizmo it is you wanted, so long as the epoxy isn't too much of an insulator, and so long as it doesn't discolor with heat. And well, frankly, there are quite a few ways that this could go wrong, but that's what makes it such a fun science experiment. We're going to take a wireless charger, tear it down, encase it in epoxy, and then hope that it doesn't melt itself down. Alrighty, now that we are here in the shop, step number one on this build is going to be, well actually, you know what? I already did step number one. I came out here a couple of days ago and I cast this solid block of clear epoxy. This guy is going to be the basis for the case for our wireless charger. So, in as few words as possible, here is the plan for this block. We are going to use a CNC to route out an area on it that's big enough for all the electronic components in a wireless charger. We're then going to put those components in. We are going to cast it back up to the top, filled with epoxy, and hopefully it'll still remain relatively clear. You guys ready for this? We are very much in uncharted territory right now. I have never run epoxy through the CNC, so I'm kind of curious to see how this goes, but I'm also a little bit scared. Turn that on. Here we go. Now, I'm sure many of you at home are thinking that this is kind of a weird way of tackling this project, and you aren't wrong. I kind of had some ulterior motives for doing it this way. I have an upcoming build where I want to mill some epoxy blocks, so this was also kind of a test run for that. And by the way, you might want to get subscribed so you don't miss that video, because I think it's going to be pretty cool. This is it. That's it. You know what? That actually cut a lot nicer than I thought it would. After a quick cleanup, I noticed that there were some pretty aggressive tooling marks on the block, so to give this method the best possible chance of working, I grabbed my die grinder along with some fine grit sandpaper and did my best to smooth them all out. And pretty quickly, I was reminded of just how much of a mess epoxy can make. Well, we are down to a light haze instead of a mess of tooling marks. So what we have to do now is disassemble this donor wireless charger. This is just a cheapy one that I got off Amazon. I think it's like 15, 16 bucks, something like that. So we're gonna tear it down and see how it ticks. Wireless chargers are a marvel of modern engineering, but thankfully for me, their internals are actually relatively simple. Once you pry your way inside the case, there's an induction coil, a control board, and that's about it. So I set the case aside, and then I realized that I should probably test the thing. I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't at least test to make sure that this wireless charger actually worked outside of its case. So I got a status LED, that's good. Let's see if I just hover the phone above it. So right about there, it starts charging. So you can see I'm a good like ½ inch away from the coil. That's pretty significant. I was about to start casting, and then I realized that I should probably also give the USB cable the whole teardown treatment too. So I grabbed a sharp knife and carefully peeled back the insulating plastic to reveal the wires and the bare metal connector. Now that we got the teardown done, it's time to seal up this thing so that we can cast some new epoxy in here. So we're gonna put that in there like that. And we just gotta seal up this little area here. To start, I used some red tuck tape to do most of the heavy lifting. This stuff is awesome for working with epoxy because it won't stick to it at all. However, it is kind of tough to make an epoxy tight seal with it around a cable. So to make sure this thing was really well sealed, I grabbed some fast drying latex caulking and applied that as well. Okay, we'll just give that a few minutes to dry. And while we're waiting for that to happen, let's mix up some epoxy. For this build, I'm using Flowcast epoxy because it's just super easy to use. No need to torch it, no vacuum pot necessary because it cures over the course of 72 hours, so there's just plenty of time for all the bubbles to work their way out on their own. Okay, it looks like it's actually filling out a lot of those tooling marks. I'm so pumped on this. So at this point, I don't really think there's anything left that we can do here other than just wait for the epoxy to cure, but that's okay because I'm pretty sure that there's a very special package waiting back at home from the sponsor of today's video. You know, some people might say that trying to make your own clear wireless charger is kind of bespoke, just like today's sponsor, Bespoke Post. So, what is Bespoke Post? Well, it's a monthly membership club delivering awesome boxes of top shelf goods from under the radar brands. They actually sent me 3 of their boxes inside this bigger, larger box, and we're gonna unbox them together and see what's inside. Okay, so box number 1 here. This is the Tonto, and this is a very nice looking knife. Look at this Damascus steel blade. That is so nice. This is perfect because I have been looking for an everyday carry knife for just doing stuff around the house. Yeah, I'm gonna get a lot of use out of this thing. Now, on to the next one. So, when you first sign up with Bespoke Post, you complete an online questionnaire and tell them about all the things that you're into. And then, every month, they put together boxes of goods, 90% of which come from small businesses, and many of those are based in the US. Each box has around $70 in value, but you pay only a fraction of that. Next up, I feel like this is continuing the theme of everyday carry because we have the carry. Oh, there's quite a bit in this one. Geez, that's a lot. We've got this nice wallet here, like really slim and simple. I like that. We also have a gold rollerball pen, which will be perfect for me taking notes and drawing designs. And then finally, oh, we have a nice Gerber multi-tool. That's awesome. And the best part about this whole thing is that you only pay for what you actually want. Each month they show you a preview of the box before it gets shipped to you, and you decide if you want to keep it, swap it for something else, or just skip that month entirely. This is the last box, and it is, oh man, it's by far the biggest. This is the weekender, but I think I might just call this thing the weekdayer. I am constantly taking changes of clothes with me to the shop in case I need to go somewhere afterwards and look presentable, and I think this is perfect for that. So if you would like to sign up, go to the link in the video description and use coupon code ZachBuilds to save 20% off your first box, or go to bespokepost.com/ZachBuilds. All right, let's go see if our epoxy is cured now. All right, so it is a few days later. Our epoxy is nice and cured, but unfortunately, I think we are going to have to file this attempt under the heading of close, but no cigar. When you look at it from this angle, it actually looks pretty good. I mean, yeah, you have this ring around it, but that's just a height difference between this intersection and the outer section. However, when you rotate it like this, or maybe like that would be a little bit easier for you to see, there's just the hint of a line where the bottom of it and the side of it is from the carving before. I could probably make this look pretty good, but I want it to look really good. I want it to look perfect. So I think we're gonna go back to the drawing board and try again on this. So real quick, I made a new casting vessel by cutting down a bunch of melamine, screwing it together, and then wrapping it all in red tape. If you're on a budget, this is probably the cheapest and easiest way to make an epoxy casting form. However, if you don't mind spending a few bucks, I'd check out an HDPE form or even a silicone one. The tricky thing about this is that we're gonna have to do it in 2 pours, and between each pour, we're gonna have to wait 72 hours. So it's gonna be kind of time consuming, but I think this should work much better. And truth be told, I probably should have just done it this way from the start. But as they say, you live and you learn. So again, I mixed up some more Flowcast, filled up the form to approximately the halfway mark, and then left it to cure for the next 3 days. Once it had, I drilled a hole just above the level of the epoxy to feed my USB cable through, connected that to the wireless charger, and then sealed the hole using some more latex caulking. So, 3rd attempt at this pour. Let's see how it goes this time. Now, Flowcast is actually quite good about releasing bubbles over time because it cures so slowly, but I am gonna agitate this just a little bit in order to try and work out any bubbles that might be trapped underneath the wireless charger. Might not be completely necessary, but it should make for a better final product.
3 days later.
Alrighty, it's a little over 72 hours, and that means we can officially demold this thing and see how it looks. But from the outside, it is looking really good. I'm excited, in case you can't tell. I know this one's gonna be a little tricky to get off of there, I think. And now we'll just peel this thing, some sort of weird fruit. Would you look at that? That is a really clean and really clear casting. So the next thing we have to do is the first real test. Battery brick, USB cable. Let's see if this thing still turns on even. Oh, I see a blue light. I think we're still functional. I think this epoxy is a little too thick right now in order to actually get a wireless charging signal through it. So why don't we mill this thing down to a more reasonable size?
The nice thing about epoxy is that it cuts pretty similar to wood, so I was able to use my table saw to trim down 3 sides of my epoxy block. The other nice thing about it is that it's clear, so you can see the blades through it as it's cutting it, which is really cool and definitely not something that you can say about wood.
All right, so that's pretty good for height and width. Now, let's do thickness.
Because this block is so small, it's not really safe to plane down on its own. So I used some double-sided tape to stick it to a sled, and for good measure, I also taped down the USB cable. Then I ran it through my drum sander a whole bunch of times. Once I had it planed within a 1/4 inch or so of the induction coil, I flipped the block over and did the same thing to the other side.
Now that is much more like the thickness that I had originally imagined for this project.
Monolithic slabs are so 2001. So to add a little bit of detail to this charger, I chamfered the outside edges. And then, to really step things up, I cut the corners with a miter saw, which I think gives the whole block an almost gem-like appearance.
Now that is looking a little bit more like what I had originally imagined for this project. So I want to make a wood base for this thing that is going to hold it at an angle, something like that. And figuring out how to do that was actually surprisingly hard, but let me show you what I came up with. There's a helicopter flying directly over above the shop right now, which is incredibly rude. I don't know if that picked up on my microphone or not, but it was really loud for me. So this is a jig that I made that will allow me to run my router at a 15-degree angle. I just press it in there like that, and I can scoot it along like that. So sounds pretty complicated. It was a little hard to figure it out, but hopefully it should all work. Is that helicopter coming back? Seriously? I mean, I could just close the door to the shop, but it's hot today.
The trick to getting this setup to work was using my trim router kind of like a CNC, slowly lowering it into the wood and cutting the channel in many passes. Trying to cut too much material in a single pass is a great way to kill your router bit. Ask me how I know.
Oh no, did I break it?
With the channel cut, I then had to drill a couple of holes in the bottom of the slab to feed the USB cable through.
Just thread this through here and then should be able to mark out the last little bit that I need to chisel out.
Because I was using a round router bit, the channel that I cut had rounded ends, which wasn't a very good fit for my gem cut epoxy slab. So I very carefully chiseled out the last little bit of wood. Longtime viewers of the channel know that I am not great with hand tools, so I was definitely a bit worried about messing this part up.
Okay, moment of truth time. Let's see if this fits. Okay, now I'm starting to get excited. That looks even better than I thought it would.
A couple of quick cuts on the miter saw, and I had a perfectly sized base for my wireless charger.
So that is not bad looking at all. However, I gotta say, I'm not a fan of some of the hard edges on this thing. I think it's a little too much, especially with a crystal looking wireless charger. So let's take this outside and make it look a little bit more organic.
It's been a long time since I've gotten a chance to do any power carving. The last time I did it was on my fake live edge side table, and this application is basically the same. I used my cut saw disc to carve away at the wood, and by following the natural grain of it, I was able to create a decently convincing faux live edge. I then cleaned off the carving marks with my sander and moved over to the router table to cut a channel on the bottom of the stand. In retrospect, this was probably not the best way to do it. As you can see, the cut is pretty rough, but again, you live and you learn.
Let's do a little test fit here. I want to be careful with this cable. Pull this through there like so. Cable routes down through there like that. We have ourselves a nice clean setup. With the cable management worked out, we are free to move on to finishing, and I actually got a new finish to play with today. We are going to be using Osmo. I've had a few people recommend this to me over the last like 6 months or so I figured I'd get a can and try it out. Apparently the best way to apply this stuff is with a little Scotch-Brite pad, so we're gonna try that out. Barely even put that in there. Oh, I like the look of it already.
I actually bought the Osmo with the intention of using it on a larger project, but I always like to trial run new finishes on smaller stuff first. That way I can get a feel for it, and if I need to sand it back and start again, I can, and it's not that much work.
Now we're moving on to the next thing, which is trying to restore the crystal clear clarity of our epoxy. I have a feeling this might take a little bit.
This is the part of the build that I was least looking forward to. Polishing epoxy is just plain labor intensive. I started by running through all of the sanding grits on my random orbital sander from 80 straight through to 400. And you can see that I'm actually using a folded up cloth to protect the opposite side from scratching itself on the table as I sand it. Epoxy is so soft that you really have to watch out for little things like this. Then it was on to wet sanding with higher grits. If you've never wet sanded before, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's sanding plus water. The idea here is that the water acts as a lubricant and helps to remove dust and debris that can cause swirl marks. Gator actually makes this special sandpaper that doesn't fall apart when it gets wet, specifically for applications like this. So I started with 600 grit, then I moved up to 1200, and then I finally finished on 2000 grit. And then, to really take it home, I grabbed my polisher and used a little bit of automotive polish to, well, polish it.
Okay, so it took me a while, but that is looking really clear. Look, I can see you through it. I'm gonna put a very thin layer of Osmo on here in order to protect it, because I'm worried the epoxy is quite soft and might get scratched over time.
I'll be honest, I don't know how well the Osmo stuck to the epoxy because I didn't see much of a change after applying it. I've seen a lot of other creators use it in similar applications to good effect, so maybe it is working and it's just so clear that it's basically invisible.
All right, so that is now looking pretty clear. I've got 2 coats of Osmo on here. If I'm being perfectly honest, there are still some very small, like little micro scratches. I could probably keep polishing, but then I remembered I don't even know if this thing works yet. So what we're gonna do now is piece this thing together. We're gonna do the last couple steps and then we're gonna take it home and test it out.
In order to secure the slab to the base, I used a little bit of brown CA glue. This stuff is from Starbond and it's fantastic because you can get it in a whole bunch of different colors and color match it to whatever you're working on, which is kind of handy in a build like this because of all the clear epoxy and, well, you guys get it. You can see what's going on here. As a final step, I used some hot glue on the underside of the stand to secure the cable in position and to keep it from flexing and potentially breaking over time. Because the cable is cast right into the epoxy, if it broke, I would be kind of screwed.
The glue is now dry, so what do you guys say we do a little preliminary test here? I'm pretty sure the charger is still going to work. Yes, it does. The blue light comes on. Now let's see if it goes through epoxy. It goes through epoxy. So now the real question is, will this thing melt itself down over the course of fully charging a cell phone? Sure, it works for a minute, but can it work for 2-3 hours at a time? I don't know. Let's go home and find out. All right, so here we are back at home. I have my phone here, which I have conveniently drained down to about 30% battery. I have the wireless charger, and we are gonna see if we can charge this thing all the way back up to full without this melting down. I know this is, a pretty simple test, but I am genuinely excited to see what the results of it are gonna be. What do you guys think? Is this gonna work or not? Here we go. Okay, so the phone says it's charging now, and it's gonna take approximately 1 hour and 52 minutes for a full charge. I had kind of forgotten how slow wireless chargers are. So while we wait, one thing that I noticed is that the speed of the wireless charger depends on the type of USB port that it's plugged into. So earlier I had it plugged into a USB port on my monitor, but it was only giving me very slow wireless charging. So then I plugged it into this battery bank here, which has USB power delivery, and it dramatically sped it up. So it definitely depends what you have it plugged into, and I feel like rapid charging is going to generate more heat, so this is kind of like a worst case scenario. Oh, I don't know guys, this is turning out to be a little underwhelming. Both the phone and the wireless charger are not really heating up that much. What are we? We're 22% into this charge, so you know, about a quarter of the battery, and this thing is barely even beyond lukewarm. Okay, I got so bored waiting for this thing to charge that I actually just went and took a little nap. But we are now at 98% charged. So at this point, I think it's safe to say that yes, you can encase a wireless charger in epoxy and it'll still work. Or can you? Because one of the things I was worried about outside of it just not working in general is the epoxy starting to discolor. So let's get this phone out of here and let's take a closer look. I'm looking around all of the chips and the coil itself, and honestly, I don't see anything. It looks pretty immaculate. And frankly speaking, I've only had the phone off this for like 10, 15 seconds, and it's already cooled down really significantly. It's warm to the touch, and you can tell that it's like, there's definitely heat there, but it's by no means hot. Well, there we have it. I mean, it works. I'm honestly kind of surprised about that, but now that I know that this does work, this opens up a lot of possibilities. In fact, maybe some of you guys could comment down below and let me know if there's anything that you would like to see encased in epoxy, because I definitely want to do more projects like this. Now, unfortunately, due to the experimental nature of this project, I didn't really finish it to the normal level of quality that I would like. I mean, first off, just the design, I think I really should have added a little lip here such that the phone doesn't have a tendency to slide off like that. I mean, it's not that big a deal, but it would have been nice. And then the epoxy job I did is just not that great. There's a little piece of smuts caught in here. There's some glue left over on the coils. You can see some micro bubbles in here. Honestly, I just should have been a little bit more diligent when I was doing the epoxy work. Oh, and like I said before, I probably should have sanded this and polished it for a little bit longer. But all of that being said, I am extremely happy with how this turned out, especially as a proof of concept, and I am very happy to have it on my desk. And on that note, I think this video has probably run its course. So thank you so much for watching. Big thank you, big thank you to all my Patreon supporters. You guys are the best. Big thank you to Epoxy for consulting with me on this project, even though I'm pretty sure they didn't think it would work. And yeah, links for everything I use will be down in the video description. All right, that's it for me, guys. I'll see you in the next one.